The Bible is a living word that reads us as we read it. It's a person, a voice that proves that time is not linear, as one sentence can confirm the past, guide the present, and declare the future. You are here. I am here. He is here. We are here right now, in the tomorrow of yesterday and in the yesterday of tomorrow. I thank you for joining today. So we're back. Thank you so much for joining once again. In our last episode, we talked about Judah and Judah's sons and how he had this fortune of having his sons die in their sin. And so two of his first son died, his second son died, and he thought that it was very much attributed to the woman that they were with. Tamar. And so when it came to the last son, he didn't want to give her up. Anyway, Tamar was forgotten. You have to go back and listen to it, but Tamar was forgotten and she strategically made herself remembered. And as a result, she ended up being in the ancestry profile of our Messiah, Jesus Christ. And so this episode, we're actually going to pick up again talking about Joseph, who again was hated by his brothers. He was a man who had these dreams, or a young boy. He was 17 at the time that his brothers ended up selling him into slavery. Okay, and so we're going to pick back up in that story. So once his brothers sold him to the Ishmaelite traders, they then took him to Egypt and sold him to the king's captain of the guard, this guy named Potiphar. So Joseph was working for Potiphar, and the Lord was with him in everything that he did. Like he just kept giving him favor in everything that he was a part of. And that got Potiphar's attention. Potiphar realized like it's something different about you. Like I see that there's excellence all around you. And that's like I want that. So he ended up making Joseph his personal assistant. And I'm gonna put a quick pause right there because I believe that this is something that God does. In the kingdom of God, we are to operate in a level of excellence that it gets people's attention and ultimately points them back to God, because that's what happened here with Joseph. Like God favored him so much, there was excellence around him. He operated in excellence and he ended up getting promoted. And so Potiphar's like, yeah, I want that. And he made Joseph his personal assistant, put him in charge of everything. Like Potiphar was the captain of the king's guard. And so he was in a very high position himself, but he put Joseph in charge of everything he owned, his household, his property, like you name it, everything except for, of course, his wife. But there was this situation. It just so happened that Joseph, he was fine. And Potiphar's wife was checking for him every time he moved. Anytime he was in her vicinity, she was in heat. And she kept trying to get with him. And Joseph was like, "No, man, like Potiphar, trust me. Like I'm good on all that. Like he trusts me with everything, but I'm not about to cross him because you in heat." But she was so thirsty and she just kept pressuring him and she's like, "Oh my God, you look so good. And I just want to be with you." And he just, and he was like not having it. And there was one occasion when Joseph was doing some work in the quarters or like in the home, and Potiphar's wife was just like not taking no for an answer. And so she grabbed his cloak, like the garment that he was wearing. She grabbed it. Like, come on, like ain't nobody gotta know. And he was just like, no. So when she grabbed it and he pulled away, she ended up like exposing him, like pulling his clothes off of him. And he took off running. And so he's just like, nah, she's bad business. I don't want like, so he just took off running. And she was so in her feelings about it and so offended by this rejection that she was like, "Oh my gosh, like, he just tried to come on to me," and she cried SA, like, she really put him in a very dangerous position because she accused him of being the one that was forcing himself upon her when really it was the other way around. And so while she was waiting for Potiphar to make it home, she's all hugged up with Joseph's clothes and like smelling his cologne and just like, I just wanna. And but then when Potiphar comes in, she's just like, "Look, here's his clothes," like, he even left his clothes behind, and it was just a really big deal, and Potiphar was irate, and he ended up throwing Joseph in prison and having him locked up, and even in that, because I can imagine that that was a very difficult situation for Joseph to endure. Like, mind you, he was loved by his father, he had all of these brothers, they hated him, they their desire was to actually end his life at first, but after more consideration, they ended up selling him. Like, so how do you sit with that in your mind? Like, my brothers hate me so much that they would sell me just to get rid of me. And then he finally makes it to where he is. By God's grace, he's promoted. He's in this position. He's doing things right. He's operating in excellence. He's getting attention that is for the glory of God. And then this thirsty woman puts him in a position where now he's back in a pit. And so he's in this prison, but God is there too, right? And so God showed favor to Joseph. And even when he was locked up, the warden took a liking to him and was like, "You a cool dude," and put Joseph in charge of the other prisoners. And so during the time that Joseph is locked up, these other 2 dudes end up being thrown in prison too, and they were, guys who actually used to work for the king, right? So they were the chief cupbearer and also the chief baker, and they were put in Joseph's block, so he was in charge of them. And so one day, this chief cupbearer and the chief baker, now the baker would bake things. The cupbearer was responsible for, usually they would take a sip of whatever wine that the king would drink to make sure that it wasn't poison, so that if it was poison, the cupbearer would die before the king would. So they had a really big responsibility to like cover his drinks and make sure that the king was only drinking things that were good for them and they weren't, at risk of death by way of poisoning. And so the cupbearer and the chief baker both had dreams one night that were like really disturbing to them. And remember, Joseph was a dreamer himself. So he's like, "What's on your mind? Why y'all looking so down? What's up?" And that's when they told him, like, "Man, we had these crazy dreams last night, man, and like we can't figure it out." And that's when Joseph's like, "Yo, that's God's business. So talk to me and I'll talk to him and we'll see about how we can get you some understanding here." And so the chief cupbearer, he went first. And he's like, "All right, so I saw this grapevine and like there were 3 branches and there were all these clusters of grapes that were budding and I was holding Pharaoh's cup and so I squeezed the grape juice into the cup and I placed it in Pharaoh's hand and Joseph's like, "All right, bet. So this is what that means. In 3 days, Pharaoh's gonna give you your job back. And when he does, just put in a good word for me, man, because like I'm innocent. Like I'm not supposed to be here. Just like don't forget about me." And so the baker went next and he's like, "All right, cool, let me tell you about my dream." And so the baker, he told him his dream. He's like, "All right, so I saw these 3 baskets, right? And in the 3 baskets, there were all these pastries. They were stacked on my head, and these birds came, and the birds, they were eating all the pastries from the baskets on the top of my head." And Joseph, he was listening, and I can imagine his face being kind of turned like, oof, and he's like, "Dang, man, I wish I had better news for you, but this what your dream means. So in 3 days, Pharaoh's gonna Basically, he gonna make a shish kebab out of you, and the birds, they gonna peck away at your flesh. They gonna be eating on you. I only imagine, like, the chief cupbearer was trying to contain his excitement for the fact that he was about to get his job back and not make the baker feel bad, but, like, imagine just walking away from talking to Joseph with that revelation, like, "In 3 days, Imma be impaled with a stick." Anyway, sure enough, 3 days later, it's Pharaoh's or the king of Egypt's, right? It's Pharaoh's birthday, and he summons the baker and the cupbearer, and just as Joseph predicted in the dreams, the cupbearer, he got his job back, and the baker was turned into a shish kebab. And so, sure enough, when the cupbearer got his job back, he was just so caught up in the excitement, and he forgot about Joseph. Like, he didn't mention him, he didn't anything. And so 2 years passed, and it turns out the king had some dreams himself, and he was shooketh. Like, he was mad disturbed about these dreams. And so he was calling for, like, all the magicians and the wise men and all of these people who could divine their revelations in other ways, and he needed them to help interpret his dreams, but they couldn't. And then the cupbearer remembered, and he's like, "Yo, I feel so bad. I forgot, but yeah, I know a guy," you know? And so Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and Joseph, he shaved, he got all cleaned up, and he went to stand before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's like, "Listen, I heard about you. I heard you've interpreted this dude's dreams and all of that, like, and that they came to pass. So I need your help, man, and I need you to help me understand what these dreams mean." And Joseph told him, like, "I just gotta let you know right now, it's not in my own power. Like, it's God who can help in telling you what it means." So Pharaoh lets him know what the dreams were about. He's like, "I was standing on the bank of the Nile River, and all of a sudden," he's like, "7 fat, healthy cows. I'm talking like Wagyu. They came out the river, and then these 7 scrawny looking cows came out the Nile River after them, and then the little skinny ones ate the fat ones. And even after the little skinny ones ate the fat ones, they didn't get any bigger. Like, they were still just as skinny as they were before they ate them." Then I woke up and I went back to sleep, and I had another dream. And in that dream, I saw 7 healthy heads of grain, and they were eaten by 7 shriveled heads of grain. And Joseph, as Pharaoh was talking, I imagine he's like, "Mhm, mhm." He's listening to Pharaoh, but he's also very much listening to God as God is giving him the interpretation. So Joseph lets him know, he's like, "Listen, Pharaoh, this is what it means. We're going to see 7 years of prosperity, followed by 7 years of famine," which again is like food scarcity. And he let him know, he's like, "Those years of famine are going to be so severe and significant that the prosperity will be forgotten. Like, the bad is going to be so bad, there will be no memory of the good." It's so cool because not only did Joseph have the ability to interpret the dreams, but he also had a strategy for what to do. And so he told him, he's like, "This is what you need to do." He's like, "You need to find yourself a wise man, put him in charge of all the land. And what you need to do, you need to have him collect a fifth of all the crops during those 7 really good years. And that way, if you collect a fifth of the crops while it's all good, store it away. Then during the years, those 7 years of famine where things are going bad, you'll have something. You'll have some resources to pull from." And so Pharaoh was like, "Yo, you got the job and you're in charge." Cause I can't imagine anybody else who would even have the ability to make that happen. Like, you came up with the strategy, like, make it happen. You're the one. And the king promoted him to such a degree. He's like, I'm the king, but there's nobody else who can make a move without your permission. I'm the only one who has a higher rank than you. That is such a big deal. He went through a lot of heartbreaking situations. Brothers sold him. He was set up by Potiphar's wife, thrown in prison. He was forgotten about. Now he's remembered and he's second to the king. Okay. So God is so good. God is so good. And the whole time God was with him. And that's important to note because there are times we go through things and we forget about the fact that God is with us because we're so focused on the thing that we're going through and not the outcome. Mind you, we know the story and how this is going to end, but Joseph didn't. He didn't fully know that because he was living it out, right? And anyway, Joseph was promoted. The king gave him a new name. He gave him a wife. He gave him all these riches. He's like, you get to ride with me, you working with me, all of this. And at this time, Joseph was 30 years old. When he got his wife, he had two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, or which we will be referencing again later on in future episodes, Lord's willing. But he had these two sons and he got to work. So the 7 years of plenty happened just as he predicted, just as he was able to see in the dreams. And Joe, he was stacking and stocking. The people would bring him a fifth of the crops. He was making sure it was all stored away. And then after those 7 really plentiful years happened, sure enough, the famine struck. And when it struck Egypt and all the surrounding countries. And it was so severe throughout the world that people would have to travel to Egypt because word got around like, yo, Egypt actually still has some food because they got this food stored up. And so people would travel from around the world to go to Egypt in order to get food. And when they would go to Egypt, Pharaoh would tell them, like, yo, y'all need to go see Joseph because he's the one in charge of the supply. We're going to stop there for this episode. But a few things. God remembers you when it seems like you're forgotten, when it seems like things are so torn up and you just don't know and you don't see any hope, but you're holding on to a dream. Because remember, Joseph had these dreams that his brothers were going to bow to him, that like he had dreams, but he also had pain. But we're starting to see now that God doesn't, and I say this often, but God doesn't allow any of the pain to go to waste. And we're going to see some redemption here in the next episode if the Lord blesses me to record another one. You're amazing. I'm so grateful that you are still sticking it out with me and listening to these episodes. I look forward to chatting with you again very soon. Until then, bye for now.